It's no secret that creative people, and artists in particular, tend to be on the obsessive side. What I mean by that is that we tend to want to draw at the most inconvenient time possible, whether it's late at night before work or school, or even during an exam. However, when we actually do have time to do art, opening that sketchbook or grabbing that graphic tablet can feel like the hardest task. Sometimes even just getting yourself to sit down and draw can be a challenge, much less figuring out what to even actually draw in the first place. I previously talked about my own art burnout a while back, and some of the steps that I took to get past that. But in this video, I want to take that a step further, and regarding that into how you study art and improve your skills. I am Ayasuna, and I make videos, more specifically art videos, and I feel like this is a follow-up / part 2 of my burnout video that I made a while back. And obviously in that video I mainly talked about burnout as far as a whole mental health situation, because obviously if you're going to be creative you need to take care of your physical and mental well-being. I mean, simple things such as posture and just getting enough sleep can help your creative process. I think some, but not all, artists tend to glamorize doing things that might be detrimental to their health in order to make art. And I get it, I've pulled all-nighters before working on art. But that's not exactly something to normalize or glamorize, especially to a younger audience, because that leads to bad artistic habits as well as just bad habits in general. But apart from that, I wanted to take this video to talk about the whole technical aspect of making art. Because fundamentally speaking, no matter what your art style is, if you want to improve, you have to study. Whether that's anatomy, color theory, values, perspective, composition, and other fundamental aspects of art. These are skills that once you pick up, they sort of stick with you even if you take an extended break from art. But if you're starting out, a lot of that can seem pretty daunting. And if you're like me who struggles to focus on one thing at a time, learning all these skills and keeping it in an organized, neatly typed package can be difficult. But despite all that, art has been the one hyperfixation that I actually stuck with over the years. And today I want to share some of the tips that I had when it comes to studying art, at least in a bite-sized way, and in a way that doesn't let you get bogged down by perfectionism, which I used to deal with quite a lot back in the day. And speaking of perfectionism, one of the most important things to know if you're going to pursue art long term is to have fun with the process. Like I've said previously, social media can obviously be a great tool for artists, but it can also become a great enemy if you let it. And what I mean by that is if you're scrolling through Twitter or TikTok or really any social media platform, you're likely seeing artwork in its finished state. And more specifically on places like Instagram and Twitter, you likely didn't see the process that it took for the artist to get to that finished look. I mean, obviously it's one thing to be proud about your finished work, but so many artists, both professional and beginners, are more concerned with the end result than what it took to actually get there. And by extension, they lose that sense of enjoyment of making art. I had a phase when I was like this where I thought that I had to constantly pump out art in order to get noticed. And I do understand that in a professional sense. If you are a professional artist, of course, you are expected to meet deadlines. But even under a time limit, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy what you make, as well as enjoying how to make it. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to love every single step of making art, and this is mainly dependent on what medium you use, whether that's traditional or digital. But at least in my case, just being able to get my ideas down on paper or on a program is just really satisfying. It doesn't even have to be a full-blown illustration. A simple 15-minute doodle makes me excited to create. And while I have had moments of burnout, just getting my ideas out is still something that I enjoy. While it's necessary to have long-scale plans for longer projects and illustrations, if you're just wanting to be creative and don't exactly have a plan, there's nothing wrong with that either. And related to that, my second tip, try not to be as concerned with what other artists are doing. And this is a tip that even I am still trying to learn. But let me explain what I'm talking about here. I think it's a generally accepted fact that social media is designed for us to compare ourselves to others. Artists and people who understand design also aren't immune to this. If anything, we're more susceptible to it. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with being inspired by your favorite artist. We may want to study their style, which again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Just don't pass off the artwork as your own, or try to monetize off of it. But sometimes we do get caught up in the process of another artist instead of our own. Sometimes it can be easy to think that, hey, an artist achieved a certain look because they were using certain tools, which in some cases is true, especially with digital art. But the point that I'm trying to get at here is that even given the same tools as your favorite artist, you still likely won't be able to achieve the same results as they did. While it's good to get advice and study from other artists, sometimes you just kind of have to do your own thing. Like, it's good to take inspiration from things that you like. Having some sense of originality, I think, is important, especially now. Because I think sometimes that these social media platforms are trying to get your algorithm to behave a certain way. Art really shouldn't be the place for conformity. But I think I'll talk about that topic in another video. By the way, if you made it this far and you like the topics of the process of making art as well as media literacy, then you might as well leave a like as well as subscribe, because I talk about these topics all the time, either in video or on live streams, both here on YouTube as well as on Twitch, twitch.tv/Iasuna19. Art is part of the human condition, so understanding what an artist is thinking as they create, as well as how it's perceived by the population overall, is something that's really important to me. So if you like those things, this channel is for you. So with the shilling segment out of the way, my third tip of making art studies enjoyable is to actually study what you like. While I did say that originality is important, taking something that you like and putting your own spin into it is never a bad thing. For instance, here I was doing fan art for one of my most favorite movies, The Mummy. Sure, The Mummy is a bit cheesy, but both the female and male lead in that movie are quite gorgeous. And I kind of wanted to study color theory because this movie is actually going to be part of the inspiration for my own webtoon series. I like the movie because it has elements of horror, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's the tone that I'm going for my own project. The other day on stream, I ended up drawing a bunch of different poses, and I happened to draw both Korra and Anakin. While you shouldn't always rely on fan art to be a crutch for doing art, if you turn your studies into something that you do generally enjoy drawing, it makes the study part a lot less tedious. Something else that I did when I was studying action poses was draw Spider-Man a bunch. I mean, his design is actually pretty simple to draw, and it made me want to draw a bunch of different energetic poses. And I also really like Spider-Man. The main idea here is if you see studying art as a chore, you're going to be less likely to want to draw. And obviously you won't improve as much if you don't study, which also makes artists not want to draw if they feel like they're not making any decent progress. So if it helps you study, then just study the things that you like. And once again, I've already said this once in videos, but I'll say it again, use your references. Anyone who says that references are cheating is someone that you should not be listening to. I don't usually like to speak in absolutes, but if you have the internet at your disposal, which you likely do if you're watching this video, you have access to tons of different reference images. So it would be foolish not to take advantage of that. That was something that many master artists in the old days did not have access to. So don't let anyone shame you for using references to improve your artwork. My fourth tip to make art studies less tedious is to not worry too much about the details. This is something that even a lot of professional artists also struggle with. If I'm starting out a drawing or sketch, I don't really like to spend too much time on it. Totally not because I'm impatient or anything, but the longer that you go obsessing over details, it tends to follow you through the rest of the piece. Your first sketch should be on the looser side of things. If you focus on details too early on, it can make your overall drawing seem stiff. This is something that I still struggle with as well. Also, to add to this, it's also okay to jump around in your drawing. This is true for both traditional and digital art. I like to think of art as a puzzle. To understand the whole picture, you might need to mess around with the pieces to see what works and what doesn't. With painting in general, you do need to be a bit more deliberate about your choices, so take the time you need to figure out what you're doing, Being able to chip away at it and make constant adjustments is something that will definitely help you along the line as becoming an artist. Moral of the story, just don't get too hung up on the details early on. You can fix it as you go. My fifth main tip for making art stays a little less tedious sort of ties into the whole idea of being a perfectionist, in the sense that it's okay if you don't master a particular art style. Obviously, mastery means different things to different people. After all, every artist draws something differently. Some people are more into drawing animated style drawings. Others are more into hyperrealism. And someone like me is in the middle of that. Nobody's art style is inherently better than anyone else's. And again, anyone who says that should not be listened to. Some artists think that they have to master a particular style before they can even call themselves artists. But that is not true. Some artists may never find a style that is truly something that they master. I myself see my art as more of a jack of all trades. There's stuff that I definitely need to improve on, but I think I'd rather be more flexible with my style as opposed to trying to master one specific thing. And I've said it previously in another video, but I'll say it again here as well. Having an inconsistent art style also isn't inherently bad. Your art style will change through the course of your life for various reasons. You aren't the same person as you were 5 years ago, so it makes sense that you don't draw like you did 5 years ago. Again, I think we as artists sometimes get too obsessed with how we think we should be, instead of focusing on what is. Social media thinks that we need to conform ourselves to be a certain way in order to get noticed. But I already explained why that can lead to burnout and an overall less enjoyment with making art. This next tip is related to more towards artists who do post their art on social media. But like, the art community can sometimes be a very toxic place. I already talked about that too previously. But your art account is pretty much like a home, in the sense that you're very proud to show off the stuff that you've worked on. It seems that more and more artists are getting swamped by hate comments to the point where they stop posting altogether. And like, we really should be getting a handle on this toxic behavior. If anyone comes onto your page and starts causing problems, just simply delete the comment. Because if you don't, it could just lead to a bigger problem. Realistically though, if you're gonna post content online, at least long term, you will need to develop a bit of a thicker skin. But like, life's too short to be worrying about someone calling your art cringe or you draw in a certain style that they don't like. Just get rid of the hate comment and be done with it. It can be tempting to respond to that type of behavior, but don't encourage it, just get rid of it. Way back when I used to post on Amino and Instagram back in the day, like almost 10 years ago, I had several comments of when I would redraw my old characters that I was stealing my own artwork. Even though my own signature and watermark was on the actual artwork, someone still thought that I stole it. I don't know if it was a troll or not, but it was just weird to deal with because they kept leaving comments. So instead of giving that person attention, I just deleted the comment. Now, I will say that in my art journey, I haven't really dealt with that many hate comments, but like, everywhere seems to be becoming a much more meaner place. But at least for my comments and my art content that I post, I want people to be able to talk about what they enjoy without having to deal with stupid stuff like that. It's just not worth dealing with people like that. And also, I guess related to that topic is how you choose to value your own artwork. I feel like a lot of artists, both new and old, struggle with the value of their own artwork. They may have friends or family that want them to do art but not really get compensated in any way. But in a lot of cases, art can be time consuming. Don't feel obligated to take on long projects for family just because they're family. And especially if you aren't planning on getting compensated for such work. Now, I like giving art to family as a gift, but I'm sure we've all had that relative or friend or whoever who wants something for nothing. But in this economy, that's not always realistic. My 8th main art tip, and this mainly applies to traditional art, but some digital artists might also find use here, is to try not to rely so much on the eraser. Or if you do need to use an eraser, go for a kneaded eraser instead. It's a running meme in the digital art community to use Ctrl-C, which of course is the hotkey for the eraser. But with traditional art, obviously, you might not always be able to erase anything that happens on your paper. If you're starting from your sketch, be sure not to grip your pencil too hard or push too hard on your paper, as obviously it does make erasing a bit harder to do. But not being able to fix every single mistake that you might make in your drawing actually does help in improving. It combats that perfectionist side of the brain that is constantly telling you that you did something wrong and you need to erase it. And this is mainly from my own experience, but ever since I switched to sketching with colored pencils, I see myself reaching for my eraser much less these days. Doing your sketches in pen can also help this. Also, if you want to add a bit of pop to your sketches, consider using a colored pencil. It's an easy way to add color and add pop to your sketchbook, and you don't really have to have any other external tools. My 9th tip in improving art studies is actually to study design theory and art history. There are countless art history channels here on YouTube, among other places. It's such an interesting field and not a lot of people talk about it, both on the technical aspect as well as the philosophical discussion of making art. A simple crash course can really enhance your enjoyment of making art to begin with. Added lessons about media literacy can improve your own storytelling, because in a way, art is a way to tell stories. At least in the US, art education is really in the drink and likely isn't going to get better anytime soon. Supporting art instructors and art historians as well as art museums helps the whole art community. And who knows, maybe that fan art you drew when you were 13 might actually end up in a museum someday. My 10th major art tip to improve your studying, and something I really need to start doing more, is to take notes while you do your studies. I started doing this more in my sketchbook, but I really need to do this to my digital artwork as well. They don't have to be long, drawn-out notes, just simple ideas or thoughts that you had while you were working on a particular part of a study, just so you can understand what went wrong and how you can improve it. And relates to all the points that I made in this video so far, be sure to be open to taking criticism. I get it, nobody really likes unsolicited advice, but if you truly want to improve long term, it is important to get criticism from others. And also related to that is not to take that personally. 9 times out of 10, in dedicated forums for art critiques, the person's just trying to help you improve. They don't have some hidden agenda, they just want to see others improve. This is an area where actual help from social media is quite welcomed. You can get feedback and tips from some of your most favorite artists from just a stroke of your keyboard or phone. There are subreddits, Discord servers, and other art channels that are dedicated for critiquing artwork. Another helpful tip for those who want to pursue art long term is to work on your grip strength. It can be tempting to draw from the wrist, but you're more likely to injure yourself if you do it repeatedly over a long period of time. When you draw, you should be making motions with your arm instead of your wrist. It reduces strain and actually makes your lines look a lot more confident on the paper or tablet or wherever you choose to draw. Another hot take that I have is that tracing isn't exactly as evil as people make it seem to be. Just like with using references, tracing can actually be quite helpful and be a time saver depending on what you're working on. But just like I've said before, it's disingenuous to try to pass off traced work as your own. But if you're using tracing to understand shapes and break them down to ways that you can understand how to draw them, I see no issue with that. The fact that it's 2025 and we're still arguing whether or not artists should or shouldn't be tracing is just something that really doesn't make sense to me. Even if it's not tracing from another artist, it's good to trace from real life. Classical artists have made use of tracing for many of their original works, yet they aren't called less of an artist because of it. Something else that I noticed that a lot of younger artists also seem to be struggling with when dealing with social media and posting artwork is being afraid to take risks. I mean, think about it. What's the worst that can happen if you have a bad drawing? Nothing really. You can always just start over. Sometimes you may end up with something different than what you intended, but it ended up being better than you could ever have hoped. To be an artist is to experiment. feeling like you have to be forced into a box constrains your creativity, which again leads to burnout. And last and not least for this particular video, remember that art is a journey. And with any journey, there's going to be highs and lows. I think it's important to take the time to enjoy the process of making art if you want to make art for the rest of your life. If you constantly feel like you need to put out art to please the algorithmic gods, it is understandable as to why some artists may get burnt out from doing this. If you feel forced to participate in certain art trends, then obviously that takes the joy out of making art. But I'm also not saying to stop doing trends completely. Some do force you outside of your comfort zone, which is a net positive for growth. But do those challenges because you want to and not because you think that you're forced to. And one last little tip that I can give is try not to overthink. I think again, artists tend to be on the more neurotic side of when it comes to creativity and thinking about how to express ourselves. Not everything we make has to be a masterpiece. Some of my best sketches were in random notebooks and not even in my own actual sketchbook. Even if you just doodle a little thumbnail of an idea that you had, it makes it easier to come back to at a later date. And related to that, cheap sketchbooks are a really good thing to combat this with. If you're using cheaper supplies, there's less pressure to be perfect. And less pressure often leads to more fun. But that about wraps up the topics that I wanted to cover in this video. And like I want to do more videos like this where I talk about learning art because I'm still learning art. If you guys have any helpful tips that you want to share, don't hesitate to leave comments down below. And if you want to share more art tips, I also have a Discord for that. I have an art-related channel for art videos and other art reacts that you guys want me to react to both on stream and in videos. Part of being an artist is to be interactive. So I'm also interested in the things that you guys work on, which you can also post in Discord. I'll have the link to that down in my description, along with all the other socials that I'm active on. Now, I admit I had to take a little bit of a break from working on videos because of a few reasons, but I'm hoping to be more consistent on YouTube yet again. I'm so close to 200 subs, and I can't even believe the growth that I've had. I've started posting long-form videos about a year ago, and I never really thought that 200 of y'all would be interested in what I have to say about making art, or other art-related topics. So once more, I'm thanking all of y'all who support me in my artistic journey. And while I did start 2025 a bit slower than I intended, I want to keep going and create content that you guys will enjoy. So, until the next video or live stream, goodbye and take care. Peace.